Hi guys, and today I'm just going to be covering something called variables. So just to recap from last time, we pretty much just learned how to print stuff, and you can go look it up in my previous tutorial. And today I'm going to be teaching you about variables. So like in maths and everything, you use variables as to store a value, and so you can use it somewhere else without actually writing the whole value. Same concept here. So every time you're going to be using a value, you're not going to be actually using the physical value of like writing it out, like writing a number out. Like you wouldn't write out like all these numbers or like whatever each time you wanted to use it. You would just store it in some integer, and well, like if it's an integer, you just store it somewhere and then use it. So basically, a variable is a location in the computer's memory where a value can be stored for use later in the program. So that's the definition. By the way, this is a comment, so the computer ignores what you write here. So a value basically has a type and it also has a name. So type is basically type basically defines what you can store inside it. So if the type is integer, you'll only be able to store like integers in it. You won't be able to store any decimal points. If the type is boolean, you'll be able to store like something called true and false. Um, you'll be able to something called true, or you can even store something called false. You'll write them like as a true or false. Then you can, if it's double, you'll be able to store any number in it, and like any decimal number in it. The thing about these is the sizes in the computer's memory are different for each one of these. So this one I believe is like 32 bits. This one I think is 32, and this one is 64. So like it all differs, and like that's why sometimes it's better to use one. Sometimes it's better to use other. Sometimes you only want to use integers. Like for example, if you were converting to like hours, like you would want to convert to like an integer value. You wouldn't want to have like 2.18 hours, because that would make no sense. So you would like convert the 2.18 to 2 hours, and then 0.18 to something else in minutes or in seconds. But that's the point of variables, and we'll be looking at how to like use these variables. So basically, basically covering it. A variable has a name, type, size, and value. So we're going to be basically every time you use a variable, you'll be storing the value inside a variable, and then that variable will be like stored somewhere in the computer's memory, and you'll be able to access it. Yeah. So I know I repeated myself a lot, but I just want to make sure that it goes across, because it can be a little confusing, and some people may not understand it. Okay, so in case you don't really get it, think of this. Uh, a variable, a variable is like a box. So you make a variable, and it's basically like a box, and then you give it some name, and then depending on what kind of box it is, you'll only be able to put a certain type of items in there. So in the same way, like an integer, if you have a box that has some name and it's of type integer, you'll only be able to put integer in there. And remember, you can replace things inside the box. So in the same way, you can replace stuff inside the variable. So let's have a look at how to actually make a variable. So one of the variables is simple, like a really simple one is int. Int basically is integer. So you go int, so you describe what type it is. You give it a name. So I'll give it a. Yeah. And then I'll assign it a value, and I'll assign it 1. Remember, this is a statement, so you have to finish it off with a semicolon. And you can do the same with int b is equal to 2. Now you're like, okay, what do I do with this? So let me give you an example. So you can do something called addition. So you can go int c is equal to a plus b. So now, when you do this, a is going to be going to here, to the memory location in the computer, and going to be like, oh, what's in the value of a? And like, be like, oh, 1. So it's going to replace it with 1. Then it's going to go, then when it reads this, it's going to be like, oh, what's in the value of b? So let me go back to the computer memory and check. So it goes back to the processor and memory and checks. Okay, b is 2. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So now if we go system. So remember, we printed a lot of strings out, but you can also print like variables. So if you print variables, then their values will be printed out, not the name. The value, if you give the value, what that's actually stored inside the variable will be printed out. Well, let's print it out. So let's see, and we'll print out C. And now if we run it, we should be getting 3, as you can see over here. So we got 3. So that basically showed that how we can use thing. In the same way, you can do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and remainder. So I'll actually cover all of those in this video because I don't want to make another one. But I'll give you a little basic example. So that's addition. So by the way, the use of comments is to like let anyone else who reads your code know like what you actually did, because when you start writing a lot of big programs, people aren't just going to be able to look at your variable name and be like, oh yeah, this guy, did this guy or this person just managed to like write this. That's not how it's going to work. So this is to let them know. So let's do subtraction. And we'll just do same thing. So we'll just go int d is a minus b. And then we'll do division. And I'll show you something interesting here. By the way, the division is that the forward slash. So just make sure you follow that. And we can just go multiplication, and multiplication is the little asterisk or on number 8 if you don't know. Shift number 8. And what we'll do is we'll just print this all out. So let's copy this, and so C, D, E, and F. So if we print it out, we should be able to. So 3, yep. Minus 1, yep. 0, so 1 divided by 2, it comes out to be 0, and 1 times 2 is 2. So you might be like wondering, hey, come on, like what the hell's happening? Like why is this, why is 1 divided by 2 0? It should be 0.5. Okay. So like I said, whatever type of a variable it is, you'll only be able to store that value. So a divided b is 1 divided by 2 is equal to 0.5. Aha. So you basically calculated the value, and now you were like, okay, I'm gonna store it inside something called integer. Remember, integers are they don't have decimal points; they're whole numbers. So the computer is going to be like, oh, okay, this is not a whole number. Let me just make it 1. So this one rule of Java, it basically rounds down. Anytime you see a decimal being converted to an integer, it will round down. So you'd be like, okay, what if I wanted to store it like as a decimal? How would I do it? So you'd be like, okay, yeah, there's something called a double or a float. There's 2 different things. I would convert it to this, and then it should work. But will it? Let's give it a go. It didn't. So why is that? You'd be like, oh, I converted the type to a double, which is for storing decimal point values. Why did it not work? But you don't understand. The answer of this. So what happens is, when you do calculations, if 2 integers do calculations, the result will always be an integer. But if an integer and a decimal value do anything, then the value will always be a decimal. So basically, if you want to have a decimal value, one of the A or B, one of them has to be a decimal value. So what we'll do is we'll make this A. We'll make this a double. Actually, yeah. So what I'll do is I'll just I'll put this above. So what I'll do is I'll make a is equal to 1.0. And you might be like, oh, why are you referencing this without? Oh, sorry, my bad. There's a okay. How about we'll just Okay, so that is called casting. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, I'm gonna show it to you in the next lecture because like this one's messing up a little bit. But point is, right now, I'll next one I'll show you how to actually do it. So if you really wanted to have a double, you have to have one of these values as a decimal point, and then so if you wanted something like 1.0 divided by thing, and then you want to store it in a double, and then you want to print it. And if you did this, it'll show you how to done, and it should work. It gave you zero point 0.5. I'll actually the reason why I didn't show you how to convert a to a decimal value is because it goes through a lot of steps, and I don't want to jump into everything and confuse you. But this is how you do it. This is how you work with variables and do some basic arithmetic. But I won't go into details. And next time we'll be moving on to equality operators. And thank you for watching.